William Binney is with us for the hour. William Edward Binney is the former technical leader for intelligence with the NSA before becoming a whistleblower in late 2001. After more than 30 years with the agency, Binney has been described as one of the best analysts and code breakers in NSA history. They basically set up a lot of what was going on, so he knew they were doing illegal stuff. Binney continues to speak out. He's been SWAT teamed, he's been attacked, he's been demonized, but it's failed. They tried to silence him and other whistleblowers. Exposedfacts.org is a site where you can read some of his analysis and material. I hope he writes a book soon. He came down here on his own dime, basically, to South by Southwest to speak. Got a pretty good reception. We'll get his take on that. He wants to go through some of the Snowden slides today for TV viewers, radio listeners, and go to infowars.com/show to find the free video feed, and hopefully send that link on to friends and family, because Mr. Binney is a real hero. He'll just say he did his duty, but in a world of traitors, someone doing their duty is heroic. And he joins us here today. William, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
I don't know where to start. We could recap your story, what's happening, get into the exciting stuff about you coming back from Germany. You've been talking to parliaments over there. You've been talking to the EU people, I believe the British Parliament, big national headlines where you say it's a totalitarian takeover in The Guardian. But here it's starting to come out in the news as well. I guess they failed to silence you. We could talk about you working with Oliver Stone now on the new Snowden documentary. We could get into the slides and break down the fact that it is going on from an expert, showing us not what's classified, but what's already been leaked so you don't get in trouble. We're here with the former technical director of the NSA, the guy that actually ran it, William Binney. So you've got the floor, sir.
Okay, but there's so much here. It's really hard to know where to start, because it's really been over time. It's been our government has moved into basically sliding down the totalitarian slope, taking massive amounts of data on our citizens and then working around and doing it across the world. So it's basically they're doing this for everybody on the planet, and the process started here in the NSA, and it started to spread around the world to the Five Eyes countries. The UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and then to other countries like in Germany and Switzerland and Sweden and Israel. So the process of data collection, and now the Russians are doing it. I just read an article where they're starting this kind of operation. So now the Russians are following our lead in this spying business.
It's a big brother race,
right? This is when I first started in October 2001. It was very clear to me that this was a process that we were adopting in the United States. It was really a Soviet attempt or a Stasi attempt in East Germany to assemble all the information on their populations. Why? It's because they wanted to control their populations. That was the whole point of the totalitarian states. It has been down through history. I mean, this is nothing new. This has been repeated so many times in Caesar Augustus. It was so clear right up front. But I mean, you can ask anybody in the Tea Party who's been denied access to 501c3. You can look at the IRS use of the data. Look at the law enforcement,
DEA with parallel construction.
The parallel construction. I mean, that's spread around the world to other police organizations around the world too. Anybody with an organization or police organization that has a relationship with the FBI or the DEA around the world is subject to getting this kind of information, but they'll never be given the original data from the NSA collection because it's not admissible in a court of law, because it wasn't acquired by a warrant. And they don't want to, with foreigners, compromise the fact that they have the ability to collect them.
And don't they then fence it and wash it, and they've been caught adding disinformation, and it's a perfect way to put into the global data stream frame-ups.
They did that kind of framing with us. They did that even with us. The Department of Justice did that. They framed us. They attempted to. But
speak a little bit about that. I think that gives people a window into how totalitarian this is.
Well, for example, in the case, the only case that went to court was Tom Drake's case. And they took him to court because he was still working for NSA at the time. This was in 2007 when they raided us initially, and then they raided Tom Drake about 3 months later. But his case didn't get to court till about 2010. Well, 2010, they charged him. In 2011, 10 and 11, in that frame, they wanted to take him to court. What they did was they took information that he had at his house that was marked unclassified, and they changed it. They drew a line through that and then stamped it classified, secret or top secret, then charged him with having classified material. That's like retroactively classifying something so you can charge somebody with having classified material. That's framing him, okay?
It's a forgery, it's a fraud, it's a major felony.
Right. And the problem with it is that they didn't know what they had done. They'd released most of that material themselves, NSA did, into the public domain unclassified. And that's what Jim Bamford found.
Because Drake wasn't stupid. He didn't want to go to prison. He was only bringing out what was already out there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was unclassified by NSA regulations. That was the way they stamped it. So
I had the former director of Star Wars on. He died a few years ago, Dr. Bob Bowman, and he talked about some of the space planes once, and then they called him and came to his house and kind of threatened him. And he said, hey, here's where it was released on C-SPAN, and here's where you guys in your own propaganda a decade ago released it. And then they couldn't go after him. But that's the type of stuff they pull.
Right. It's a total fabrication of evidence to put people in jail. That's our Department of Justice doing it.
The Bible calls it bearing false witness.
Yes. I call it perjury and felony, and these people should be charged and given a chance to explain what they did and why they did it.
Tell folks what happened to you before we get into the NSA itself.
Well, for me, in my case, I mean, I was kind of prominent, complaining to senators and representatives and various other people, as was Tom Drake.
Let's be clear. You guys were doing this internally.
We were internal of the government, yes. We were going to the inspector. Kirk Wiebe and I even went to talk to the Department of Justice Inspector General. And, of course, they couldn't say anything to us, but we made it clear what the problem was with this domestic spying. But for me and all four of us, we were the four who were first raided in July of 2007. We were raided because we were the ones who signed the DOD IG complaint against NSA, charging them with corruption, fraud, waste, and abuse. And that caused a major DOD investigation of NSA that all verified what we were saying, and that was published but redacted because it was even the unclassified embarrassing parts were redacted, which is a violation of the NSA the government
open records.
Yeah, well, it's a violation of government classification regulations too. In other words, Executive Order 13526, Section 1.7 says you can't classify something or keep it classified or not declassified if it's evidence of a crime or evidence of that embarrasses an agency or
you can't use the National Security Act to cover up criminal activity.
Exactly. And that's basically what the NSA and the DOJ and the DOD with that investigative report, that's what they were doing. They were redacting it, hiding it from Congress, and hiding it from everybody else. So they're covering up what they're doing. And for us, they attempted after the raid. By the way, the DOD IG's office was the one that gave our names as the ones who submitted that complaint against NSA. They gave our names to the FBI.
Wow.
And that was against their regulations. Okay. I mean, who now?
So they're all breaking the law while accusing you of doing it.
Yes.
And all you're doing is going to congressional committees and inspector generals whose job it is to have oversight and telling them, hey, they're breaking the law.
Yes. And also it's the committees who are supposed to, the intelligence committees in the House and Senate, and also the FISA court were established after the Church Committee investigation of NSA, CIA, and FBI in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And one of the main persons they were spying on back in the Minaret program was Senator Church.
That's right.
And that was only came out recently, and the reason they didn't, of course, was because they are spying on people who have power over them.
And let's be clear, because the fake conservative argument and the fake liberal argument is the same. We're protecting you from Al-Qaeda and drug dealers and all this other stuff, but then as more of this gets leaked and comes out, they're spying on Parliament, they're spying on Congress, they're spying on other agencies, and there's so much spying going on, and you've explained this, that back when you were really spying on the Russians, really spying on radical Islamicists, legally and lawfully, that was already legal and lawful. It's the domestic stuff that's illegal, but they confuse people and say, let us protect you from Al-Qaeda, when actually they're doing the opposite. They're letting all these groups operate because they're too busy spying on their boyfriends and their girlfriends and the congressmen.
Yeah, that's one of the cases that came out was what they called in NSA love intelligence. That's where the analysts were looking into the data to see whether or not their better parts or their spouses or girlfriends were cheating on them. Well, you don't do that. First of all, you don't do that, America. You do not do that with metadata. You do that with content. And that's what they've been trying to hide, that they've been collecting content all along, since 2002 at least. And that content is stored in Utah, San Antonio, and various other storage facilities.
And there should have been a dun, dun, dun. We're going to skip this network break. This is so important right now. William Binney, the former director of the technical division of the NSA. I've seen the news say you were the number 2, number 3, number 4. What position were you in the NSA? That position, what level is that?
Well, I was a senior executive grade. If you get in the military ranks, that'd be like a 1.5 star general. So, but I was the technical director of the World Geopolitical Military Analysis and Reporting Shop. That was about 6,000 analysts and reporters. How
high is your IQ? Because they say you've got like a mathematical brain. That come on, be serious. Was it about 180?
No, I think it was 143 or something like that. It's not, I'm just a basic country boy, fundamentally.
But you've got a genius for numbers and code cracking.
I had a real bent for doing that. Yes, it was. It's just a talent that you have to be able to look at patterns and see patterns in data. And when you can do that, that's the kind of thing you need to be able to break things and solve problems.
Somehow I want to have you on just about you, because I know most of it's classified, but you battled the Russians, the Chinese, everybody, right?
Well, mostly the Warsaw Pact, European communist countries, and the Soviet
Union. And you said before it upset you to go from really spying after serious folks to like spying on congressmen.
Yes, yeah. And every U.S. citizen in the country. Yeah, no one was exempt. Everybody was taken in. Even Senator Rockefeller, when he was addressed in January on CNN, I think it was, he addressed it. He said they've got data on. They probably even got data on me. Well, what he's saying was right. They're collecting all the data, content, and metadata on everybody in the country.
Explain those lies for folks. They claim, it's just metadata, just basically when you called, when you didn't call, like a phone bill. No. Explain what they're really doing.
Well, Mark Klein kind of exposed that too, and it's in court record in Mark Klein's case, where he laid out the wiring for all for the NSA room in the AT&T facility in San Francisco.
Sure.
And on that, I think it was room 641B. What they did was they put a prism type affair or a splitter, what's called a splitter or Y connector, where you have a fiber coming in and it duplicates it and sends it down 2 paths. One path went to the NSA room, and the other path went to the normal distribution of communications. In the NSA room, all the diagramming showed all the NARIS devices they had in there, where they pushed the fiber optic networks into the NARIS device. What that did was recompile everything on the line and sessionize it, meaning reassemble all the data. Like if you send an email, it goes out in packets. We'll pull all those packets back together and say, here's the email you just sent. And then they would pass that on to NSA for storage. And that's what that device did. It did content collection, not just metadata, but the content. And
then now we know those hubs are everywhere. And in front of us, they're building giant, huge complexes to store it all.
Yes, the latest one that they've just submitted an environmental impact statement for is a 2.8 million square foot facility on Fort Meade, taking up basically the golf course at Fort Meade. That
2.8 million
is about 3 times the size of Bluffdale. Just about 3 times. That's 1 million square feet. This is 2.8.
What I love about the NSA, we've had reporters in San Antonio and in Utah, and you just get there at the Walmart parking lot and start videotaping, and they run up, the police go, how dare you videotape us? It's just a public, it's publicly known it's there. Meanwhile, they're stealing all of our data, but, you can't aim a camera at us.
Yeah, right. It's kind of, they're hypocritical about this. They're all hypocrites. They're violating the Constitution. They say they're not everything that's legal. Well, that's retroactively passing laws. The problem with that is the laws that they pass have to abide to the Constitution. And when you violate the 4th Amendment, it doesn't matter what kind of law you pass that says it's okay to do that. It's a violation of the 4th Amendment of the Constitution, and it's not constitutional.
And they've said, the Constitution's dead. You ignore it, it won't be a problem. But now we see the president saying, I'm going to open the borders without even an order. Not even Congress, not even an order from Obama. I'm going to come after your guns without an order or without a law. They don't even do the fake orders now. They just do it. Obama announced yesterday, no more foyers for the White House. We're just not going to follow the law. This is dictatorship, not of Obama himself, but of the system, in my view. How would you describe this slide?
It's a slide into totalitarianism and an imperial presidency and control of population process. I mean, that's what they're doing. I mean, they kept everybody in the dark, so you had no informed electorate to make a decision about who to vote for about these issues or even raising these issues. They're all avoiding this issue. And they have an uninformed Congress because that's why Representatives Amash and Conyers got a group together, a coalition of Republicans and Democrats to try to unfund NSA because they realized that they were being lied to by the agencies, by the intelligence committees, and by the administration about what was going on. So, I mean, they had an uninformed Congress and an uninformed electorate by design. And that's basically what the Soviet Union, the Germans, that's basically what they did.
I got a lot of questions coming up for you, William Binney, and I want you to be able to speak on other topics you want to get into and go through some slides you gave us that Snowden leaked so you can break this down for people to kind of give us a roadmap of what's going on. But my big question is, as best you know, not being there in 15 years, but what's leaked and what people said, how many people really have access to the big master files to go in and send a order in and then get all my emails from a year ago, or go and see a file, a text file of a phone call I had last night? How many people have access to this? Because if Snowden could really get access to all of this, that means governments and spies could as well. So even if we had good people in government, which we know at the top we don't, they built this fraud, they've built something that could be taken over or hacked and thus compromise everything. You build something that spies on everything, you've just built something that corporations, spies, private corporate criminals, anybody can get into and exploit and sell. And with government's history of selling driver's license, selling uranium, whatever the case is, this looks like it's a giant bazaar of information that they've just opened up.
Yes, and internally in NSA, they have no monitoring of the network as to what's going on and who's using it. My estimate in terms of, I mean, some of the numbers I've seen say that...
Let's stop there. I don't mean to interrupt you. We monitor our network to see what people are doing around here. We monitor to see if they're downloading stuff that's illegal. We have to liability. The NSA doesn't monitor their own network.
That's right. In fact, we had proposed in the SARC, the Signal Automation Research Center, we proposed a program we called Well Grounded that said we wanted to monitor the entire worldwide network of NSA, who was on it, when they were on it, what they were doing, when they were there, as they did it. And it would be a matter of monitoring the network log like you probably do here. The same principle. It's the idea where anybody on the network sends data down the line, you can see what they're doing, and that's recorded in the log. So you can analyze that log with software, and that's what we intended and proposed to do. We had two groups opposing that. One were all the analysts saying, you will be able to see everything I'm doing. I don't want you monitoring. Okay?
But they're working in a secret government operation. Yeah. They're the ones that should have a record.
Exactly.
Plus, that people could just sell their code and let anybody in.
Yeah.
Oh, my. I mean, if I was a spy running America, I would want there to be no monitoring.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly the point. That's exactly what the analysts said. But the real opposers of it were the managers. And the reason they didn't want that happening was we could watch the movement of all the money. We could see all the money being spent on every program, the return on investment of every program, whether or not they were successful or not, what companies were competing for it, all of that kind of.
So they didn't want any oversight. So basically, It's a giant looting operation.
Exactly. In fact, there is no oversight. There's no auditing of NSA by Congress. Oh. Congress does not audit NSA. This is a setup for corruption.
Listen, I've had hundreds of employees over the years. We have 50 plus now. Best crew I've ever had, hands down. But I've turned pretty much any employee loose to do whatever they want. In almost every case, they end up going off the reservation, causing problems. I mean, the recipe of just leaving home, you know, to your 14-year-old son for a year, you'd come back. I mean, it'd be a disaster. Imagine a government agency with billions of dollars a month to spend, and there's no oversight.
Right. And they have no way of oversight. I mean, even the intelligence committees, all they can do is come out and get a briefing from the people at NSA, and all they hear is what they want to tell them. And the same is true with the FISA court. The FISA court has no way of checking or verifying or validating what they're being told. That was one of the main things we suggested to the president is how to fix NSA, is to have a technical group that would make sure that what they're telling them is true. Being very simply put, I suggest the hackers in the United States, they're the ones who want to find things and solve problems. Take these hackers, give them clearances, and give them the authority to go into any agency, in any intelligence community agency in the government, sit at any terminal, look at any database, monitor every program they have and what their analysts are doing at any time.
Basically auditors.
Yes. And that would be able to verify what they're being told is true. Right now, there is no government in the world that can trust any intelligence agency they've created.
I was at Barton Springs last year on a sunny day with two guys and two women sitting next to me on their towels, and they were all police going to finish up degrees. Two of them just finished up to go work at the NSA in San Antonio. They were bragging like they were James Bond and just blabbering classified stuff right next to me. And I looked at them and I said, when we take this country back, you're going to be known as like the Nazis. Even if you think this is cute, you shouldn't be laying around on the grass blabbering about it.
Yeah. See, that's what my wife said to me right after we were raided by the FBI. She said she wanted to leave the country because she thought this was basically the Gestapo coming in. I mean, they came in.
Stay there, sir. This is incredible, and I'm going to have to shut up. I'm jumping in a lot because this is just so epic what you're breaking down. William Binney, former technical director of the National Security Agency, is with us. He's going to get into whatever topics he wants to cover, break down where all this is going, the awakening he sees happening, his meetings with Oliver Stone, Snowden info, and more straight ahead. We'll have to go into some overdrive if you got the energy because this is epic information. All that evil men and tyrants need to flourish is that good men and women do nothing. I think it was Edmund Burke said that, British statesman. There are good people in the government. The government's not our enemy. The big corporations are doing as much spying as the NSA in certain areas. It is the fact that we have let government and corporations get out of control. Now there's no oversight. They're doing whatever they want. It's crazy. William Binney, former technical director of the National Security Agency, one of the most high-level whistleblowers of all time. I mean, he has exposed Benedict Arnold-level crimes. They've tried to put him in prison and failed. They have successfully put other patriots in prison. They put journalists in prison. But for people in the government, better choose a side because this is classic totalitarianism. Every top constitutional lawyer, whether they're liberal or conservative, has come out and said, we're going over the edge. This is scary. Even Congress is saying that, but there's no oversight, so it's just all out of control now. Now, there are centralized groups that have a lot of power, but the scariest thing is, if this was a centralized system, we could probably fix it a lot better. William Binney, and then I'm going to give you the floor to cover a bunch of topics you want to get into and go over some of these graphics from Snowden. And am I right from your expert opinion that it's worse that there's not even oversight because there's all these mini empires and God knows what going on with just unlimited spying happening, and Congress doesn't know what to do? I mean, this is just crazy sounding. Is that worse than just having one centralized group running it because we could remove them? I mean, how do you ever get rid of something that's metastasized like this?
Well, that's one of the things that we put into suggestions to the president in January last year. We sent in 21 recommendations on how to fix NSA. One of them was to have our group of technical people be able to monitor everything. And we had another one to have focused collection of data. That kind of data is what's pulled into the NSA, not this bulk acquisition. That removes the possibility of them even querying that data, because now they can't even access it because it doesn't exist. So if you did a focused attack like we did with our program Thin Thread back in the 90s, that would have eliminated this bulk acquisition. They couldn't do what they're doing. No one could do love in it, NSA. The FBI and CIA can't get into this data to do whatever they want to, like they can now, because it wouldn't be there.
They can't alter the data because they can't get to it.
They can now.
Yes,
okay, but because under the Thin Thread program, the data wouldn't even be stored there. They wouldn't have it, so they wouldn't be able to do anything with it. That was the point. We had a way of filtering out all domestic communications, metadata, content, everything. If it was domestic, it just passed right by. We could recognize it was domestic and not even take it in. So we never even acquired it. So it couldn't be stored in any NSA database. It couldn't be accessed by any NSA analyst or anybody in the CIA.
And so when you were there, the NSA was truly spying on foreign adversaries.
Yes, but at General Hayden, when he was director, and it was Bush, Cheney, Hayden, and Tenet that decided to spy on everybody. That was to expand the authority of an NSA to go in secret, by the way, to spy and collect data on every U.S. citizen and everybody on the planet. And so when they did that, that's when I first saw that coming in. That was when I had to wash my hands of NSA. I couldn't be any part of that. I had to leave because that was just I couldn't participate or even be associated with those crimes.
What did they say to you when you went into your superior's office? I guess that'd be the head of the NSA. And what did you say?
Actually, I didn't go to them at all. I went directly to the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. The reason was I knew, very simply put, that everybody had been co-opted in the hierarchy of NSA.
They'd committed the crime.
Yes, they were all a party to it. All the lawyers, all of the senior managers at NSA had all followed orders from the White House, from Cheney and Bush, to do this. And that's what Hayden directed them to say, that this direction was coming from the White House. Therefore, we're going to do it. It's lawful, and we do it.
But to talk about what a hero and how much courage you've got, I mean, you know how serious people are in this government, what they do worldwide, how corrupt it's gotten at that point. You had the will to march into Congress and to tell them what was going on. The first guy, I mean, that's 10 times bigger than Snowden internally. And to really start this whole internal debate and this avalanche of understanding now, I mean, you were really one of the first people to ring the bell to warn folks that the country, as we knew it, was being dismantled.
Yes, and in order to do that, I had to meet with one of the staffers of the House Intelligence Committee, Diane Rourke, that I knew. So I met with her at her house because we couldn't trust the House Intelligence Committee because they were a part of it. And we also couldn't trust anybody in NSA, so the only place that we'd find we could be have a conversation or even talk about this was her house. There was no other place that was secure. In
the supposed free country of America. And then you get SWAT team. Tell folks about that.
Well, yeah, after that, and after talking to other members of Congress, it was actually the morning of the second day after Attorney General Gonzalez's testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee on the terrorist surveillance program, where he only talked about the warrantless wiretap program. That was the part that was exposed.
And claimed it was for Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, right. That's right. But that was only a smidgen of what they were doing. I mean, that was like an infinitesimal of what they were really taking in. At that time, it must have been a lower percentage of phone calls, but a vast majority of emails inside the United States as well as worldwide, which I estimated to be now at least 80% of the phone calls in the United States are now being recorded somewhere. That's how Tim Clementi could say that after the Boston bombing, we can get back to what was said in a phone call between one of the Tsarnaev brothers and his wife before the bombing.
Let's be clear. They're saying it on television that they're recording all the calls, but then denying it out of the next breath.
That was CNN. Also, Director Mueller of the FBI in his Senate Judiciary testimony in 30th of March of 2011 said that he got together with the Department of Defense and set up a database where he and the FBI could make one query and get all past and all future emails on a person. Now that tells you that that's coming out of Bluffdale, by the way. All the data is being collected and stored, and so it's not just phone calls, it's emails, it's everything else. And of course, some of the recent publications show credit card use is being stored also.
How many people in the NSA how many people have a high enough clearance in government agencies, period, to be able to go in and hear my phone calls, say, to my dad yesterday?
I believe the figures I've seen, at least though it's been published, is probably on the order of about 3,000 government employees. Now, that doesn't count contractors who are managing the data. That's the real rub. You have all these contractors who manage the communications, the computers, the data storage, the query programs, and the communications back and forth between the analysts to ensure all.
Who could do a Snowden-level breach if they want?
Snowden-level breach, yes. Yeah. Because they don't have any monitoring system of them. Anybody with a system administrator or a super user case, which is what he has.
And people say there's no way Snowden could do it. No, it's like it's designed to bring the country down. It's like it's designed to end our national security, and then they're selling it as national security.
Well, that gets back to that program we wanted to put in place in 1991 or 92, which was well-grounded to monitor this. And we were opposed by the analysts and the administrator, the managers, because of all the material it exposed that they were doing. But that meant that they left the entire network with no monitoring system at all. That's why they can't tell what Snowden took. They don't have any idea. They're guessing 1.7 million.
What's behind an open border? What's behind an open NSA? What's behind, at the end of the day, what do you think the different power elites are thinking?
I basically see us moving to a controlled society, a totalitarian state where it is the government wants to be in charge. I mean, when Reagan said we're a country with a government, I think we're now a government with a country. And all of the things that are happening are only tightening that control on the people. They're going to manipulate them and keep, as long as they can keep them uninformed, and nobody realizes what's going on, or they don't see the threat. If they say, you have nothing, if you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to hide. First of all, that's a great quote from Joseph Goebbels. And secondly, that's totally irrelevant.
Yeah, they're actually quoting Joseph Goebbels on a routine basis.
Yeah.
It's like satire.
It's like the lies they keep saying. That's right out of Hitler's playbook. If you're going to tell a lie, make it a big one and tell it frequently till it's believed. And that's what's going on here. And we're assuming that we trust our government, so we're assuming they're telling us the truth. Well, that's just wrong.
It's just a bunch of corporations and private contractors screwing us over.
For money, yes. I've been basically said what they did after 9/11 was trade the security of the people of the United States and of the world for money. Because it was all about money. It wasn't about solving the problem. In fact, I originally had, because of this problem of the contractors not really solving the problem, I kept thinking, well, their vision statement must be aim low and miss, you know?
Sure.
That was what I thought originally. But really, in the end, it's keep the problem going so the money keeps flowing. That's the real issue. Their problem is getting the next contract. If you solve the problem, you don't have the problem to get money. That's their philosophy.
And that's why they've had a lot of top geopolitical analysts admit now that that's why we have such a corrupt global elite, is because they don't ever want to fix any problems because they're getting contracts, or their buddies are, off of things getting worse. But if they end up destabilizing the whole planet and bringing down civilization, then all their Swiss bank money isn't going to buy jack squat.
That's another problem with the programs that have been doing, like recognizing weaknesses in firewalls and operating systems, and weakening encryption systems with the Bull Run program, for example, out of NSA. That's weakening all those things around the world for everybody.
And you're talking about backdoors.
Backdoors and things like that, yes.
They're building backdoors and being sappers for real criminals and groups out there.
Yeah, but also weakening encryption systems so that you can penetrate them and read them. So the point is that NSA has no monopoly on smart people. People around the world, hackers and people in Russia and China and so on, all around the world, also have smart people. And they can go in and hack into systems and recognize these weaknesses in the firewalls and operating systems and the encryption systems, so they can penetrate everything too. I mean, the point is, if you keep those things weak, which is what the operational side of NSA wants to do, because then that allows them to see into what you're doing. They can penetrate.
That's like saying we want the average American to have a 70 IQ because that makes us more manageable.
Yes.
We'll just then be a nation of mentally retarded people. I mean, I hate to use a bad analogy like that, but it's like make us totally wide open so we can spy on you, not seeing the fact that it just opens the world up to all these data breaches. Every day, Bank of America or this or Google losing millions of this, millions of that, credit cards not working, my bank accounts constantly having people doing stuff. I mean, it's just a mess.
Yeah, and there's another contradictory point here, too. Part of NSA is called IAD. That's the Information Assurance Directorate. That directorate is supposed to secure communications within the United States. For the government and for anybody else, they're supposed to share technology so they can improve the security of their networks. Well, that's working against the operational side that wants to penetrate those networks. So on the one side, you're trying to defend them, and the other, you're trying to attack them. So the point is, when
schizophrenic.
When I was in operations, I had solved a system I thought was a pretty significant one, and I thought, well, the IAD people also do that for our side, so I'm going to go over and talk to them about what I've just solved from the other side, the operations side, and tell them, here's the solution on the bad guys, and is this very similar? Isn't this very similar to what you do for ours? And shouldn't you watch for these kind of penetrations that I can do over here? You know, and they wouldn't talk to me about their stuff.
Well, we have hackers that call us, some famous ones, and they tell us holes and stuff we've got. They help us. That's what white hats do. You're saying they didn't want to communicate in. Exactly,
internally in NSA. They didn't want to communicate and share that kind of knowledge. But I told them my side so they can use it defensively. But by doing the things they're doing, the operations side, seeing all the weakness, isn't telling the defensive side that they...
Wow, so these agencies, you always hear this, but they really are their own little fiefdoms waging war against each other.
And that doesn't count going to CIA and the conflicts between CIA and NSA. It's like a competition. Who has the best knowledge, right?
Since you bring that up, some people say, and I don't know if it's true or not, and you've talked to Oliver Stone, he's talking to Snowden, that Snowden could be a CIA operative in a dirty war about taking some of the power away from NSA.
I think that's basically an effort to deflect what Snowden has compromised and sent and get published about what's going on. It's a side issue. They try to deflect the narrative to something else. because CIA is a part of this. CIA, and in some of the material slides that I have that Snowden has released, it shows the CIA connection into the NSA databases, which exposes all that data to CIA as well as the FBI. And that's how they do the parallel construction. They first go in and get the data from NSA, and then they have to do a parallel construction. That's how the FBI and DEA do it. And they have that almost direct access into those databases.
It is surreal that I'm 41 years old and I'm sitting here reaching millions of people with William Binney, the former technical director of the NSA, who ran warfare operations against all these other governments, and you're here telling me that we're going into a total tyranny. I've got all these questions, these Twitter questions. That was one of them. We've got all these open phones. I'll give the number out for a couple calls. 800-259-9231. 800-259-9231. We're going to break here in a few minutes. We'll do a little bit of overdrive. And then I'm just so thankful to have you here. What else are key tidbits you'd like to impart to the listeners and viewers out there about what we're dealing with and how you think we may be able to change it? And then separately, you said you think there is an awakening happening.
I believe there is. One of the major aspects, though, that I wanted to point out here, and that's I have it in some of the slides.
Yeah, we'll start showing some of the slides, yeah.
Yeah, it was a program called the Treasure Map. And the objective there is to monitor where every device is in the world on the network, every computer, every phone, every mobile or fixed, and monitor them every minute of every day. So that's keeping a constant track on where you are and where you're moving and where you've been at what time. And that paired up with the content collection and metadata collection shows them who you are, who you're talking to, what you're talking about, and perhaps even the why you're discussing things, and even in a journalist sense, a wham about what you're trying to, or what kind of operation you're trying to do. And then you pair that up with the treasure map type approach, getting you the when you are somewhere and where you are when you're doing this. That gives you all the components of a story of your life. And that's what they're really doing. They're pulling all of this data together to get an entire picture of your life, of everybody on the planet. At least the objective seems to be every device on the network, so I estimate that to be 4 billion people, and monitoring them where they are constantly throughout the day.
And we're showing some of the Snowden documents here as you speak.
Yes. If you want to back up one. Yeah, that slide shows all of the programs internally in NSA and how CIA and FBI access them.
Skip this break too, guys. This is too important.
So they go into these programs. The programs on the right basically index the metadata. They build the social networks for that's Mainway and Marine.
All of this was denied. All of this illegal.
Right. But it also is storing the content in Pinwheel for the digital network, and the voice is in the Nucleon. That's where the content is stored, and it's indexed against the relationships that are built in the graphs in Mainway and Marina, so that analysts look at the graphs and they pull out the graph and see something interesting. They say, okay, give me all the content that goes with it, and it gets pulled out from those two databases. So
they go through, see the metadata, see the key things that the algorithm picks that they think might be important. Then they can drill down and hear you having phone sex with your wife.
Exactly. And it's also true of CIA and FBI. They've got access to that too. So that's how they do the research for crimes, or the IRS looks at who's involved with the Tea Party. They get that data right out of the graphs.
It's all there in your file.
Right. Exactly.
And they've been caught, as you know, as you said, even when yourself, just making stuff up, too. They can just add stuff in there.
Yes. That gives them the opportunity to go in and modify anything they have, right?
And they now, with voice print analysis for a long time, can take a recording of your voice with different programs that are publicly available, type it in, and then create William Binney saying in a speech whatever they wanted to.
That's also, we call that manipulation, yeah.
And the public doesn't know they can manipulate DNA, they can manipulate biometrics, they can manipulate voice.
Well, even some of the metrics that they're using in terms of biometrics, that's kind of within a range of probabilities. So that's still, if they claim they have a match, that's not necessarily a match. But they can claim it based on the probabilities that they're...
Yeah, I see that all the time. We have a voice print or a face print that you're the person that did this, and turns out it's not true.
Right. Right. Those things are only accurate up to a degree, and they won't tell you that that's true, because it weakens their argument.
Can you imagine if Stalin or Hitler would have had stuff like this?
Well, just think back in the Revolution, Washington and the Continental Congress would have been erased immediately.
And they use codes themselves.
Yeah. But, I mean, they wouldn't have had a chance.
And then this will just allow tyranny to get the biggest, fattest, and most evil it ever has.
Yes.
I think we're in for some serious times.
Yes, we are.
A lot of folks are just going to surrender, but his history shows you surrender to tyrants, it gets really bad.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately. And when they say they don't collect content or they don't tap into the fiber network randomly in the U.S., there's a slide, a Fairview slide, that shows all of the tap points in the 48 states of the United States. It's not random. It's directed. It's based at convergent points where fibers converge, where they put collection devices where it gives them a much
sure, the key hubs.
view. Right.
There it is.
No, it's not that one.
That's worldwide.
That's worldwide. Yeah, it's before that. That's it right there. And it's basically following the distribution of the population of the United States. And also, if you know, if they, as they claim, they were only after foreign communications, if they were only after foreign communications, the only sites they would need would be along the coast where the transoceanic cables surface.
Sure.
Otherwise, all the other collection points in there are domestic. And there's 80 to 100 taps. And those are the major points for, major sites for...
and we have these Death Star plans because of Snowden.
Yeah, that's right.
Many Boffins die to get us this information.
I mean, this to me is the crime. This is the domestic spying on a...
And we have them, and they flip it around on Snowden.
Right. Well, you have to...
When he's exposing a crime.
You have to change the narrative.
I mean, this is illegal.
Yes.
But so is Obama saying the borders can be wide open or he can ban green tip ammo.
What we have is a government that's above the law. Only we are subjected to the law, and they change it any way they want to fit their desire.
Unbelievable. William Binney is our guest in studio. Laura LaRue asked on Twitter at Real Alex Jones, why haven't we begun impeachment recall process for the feds funding, I got examples of them funding terrorists and spying to blackmail public officials? Why haven't we?
I think it's just a continuation of their doing what they want to do and they feel they're above the law. For example, when Nancy Pelosi, when she was Speaker of the House, said impeaching George Bush is off the table, that's because she was one of the first of 4 people in Congress briefed on these programs. So if she impeached George Bush, George could say to her, you have to impeach yourself because you're a part of this. That's
how Julius Caesar, who you mentioned earlier, got control, is he corrupted the patrician families, so they were part of it.
This was all done in secret, too, by the way.
Yeah.
They were given secret briefings. They couldn't talk about it. Rockefeller talked in his letter to Cheney about this, that I'm not a technician, I'm not a legal person, and so but I'm really uncomfortable about this, you know? So it was all they had to do at that point was say, anybody from the House should have stood up and said, look, this is obviously unconstitutional. If you don't stop this, I'm going to introduce impeachment procedures against you in the House.
And now the genie's out of the bottle and the Russians and everybody else are doing it.
Yes.
And then the argument, well, they're doing it, we've got to do it. This is a disaster. We need international treaties now. We need to dismantle this stuff. We need to go back to, you know, as you said, where they only get the metadata. They don't get all the actual data. But I mean, they've lied about it so much. They're recording everything.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. There's so many things to get to in these questions. Over and over again, they ask, how do we throw off this tyranny? What can we do?
Well, I mean, the main approach right now, I think, is you have to hammer your representatives and senators. And not just with emails or Twitter or phone calls, but also when they come to public forums with the public town meetings, get up and embarrass them with asking questions of why aren't you living up to your office oath of office to defend the Constitution? Because under this spying, they're violating all our constitutional rights of privacy.
And we know they're using it to frame people.
Yeah.
I want to go to some phone calls, but what about Google and Facebook? I mean, and all their relationships with the government and how they're engaged in spying. I mean, Hertz is putting cameras in the cars. That's mainstream news. Samsung admits their TVs are recording and watching you. They're now putting in the terms and conditions of iPhones and Droids. Yes, we're actually recording your voice. I mean, I guess they're trying to cover their butts now, and they're doing it too.
Yes, and I think all of this should be declared unconstitutional or illegal. I mean, they shouldn't be allowed to do this.
It's crazy.
Yes.
It's all these stars put their photos and phone and sex up on the cloud, and then are surprised it gets hacked.
Yes, that's the point. I mean, if you weaken systems, everybody can get in. So, and the other point is very simple, that by when these companies are doing this, this is a rich environment for NSA and CIA to mine, and the FBI. And they say, okay, now this environment we want, and we require you to give it to us. If you don't give it to us, we'll unilaterally tap the lines that you use to pass the data, and we'll get it all anyway.
And then there's a payment. We know sometimes they pay for it as well.
There's a schedule for paying for it. Yeah, there's
it's totally sick. But now they're bypassing it with all these cell towers and stingrays. They're just building their own networks to spy on us.
Yeah, I mean, and in fact, they don't even have to do that anymore now that they have all the SIM cards and all the keys to get into every cell phone and every computer. All they have to do is download from the towers locally a little implant that says, I want everything you do.
I can't believe we're coming towards the end of the interview.